Today I'll be sharing about yoga philosophy and what the essence of yoga is for people who are either of scientific or religious temperament, and also people who don't feel too strongly about either of those things, at least in the realm of learning about new ideas. And so the goal of this is just to share some core teachings that overlap with both science and other spiritual traditions. So as we prepare ourselves to receive this information, just tune into the breath, the stillness in your heart, as you feel that center point within you that is connected to the entire universe. So our place in this reality is often being shifted and changed based on the way that other people are describing it. And there's this constant narrative storytelling of different mythologies, different stories about who we are, why we're here, where we come from. And if we were to go to, say, the source of yoga, which would be in many ways the Bhagavad Gita, which was written somewhere around 3,000 years ago in ancient India, and sort of is their version of the Bible, so to speak, or it's also like an epic long story, so it's kind of like a Shakespearean novel in that sense. And it's a dialogue on a battlefield between Krishna and Arjuna. And these are deep representative figures of our own inner self, of our sense of discipline and our sense of spirit or our higher self. And as we tune into the Bhagavad Gita, this dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna says, Arjuna doesn't want to fight this battle, and he has to wage a massive war where there's essentially two large groups of people fighting, and he has friends and family on both sides. And he says, I don't want to fight. I have no peace in this. And Krishna says, you have to fight, and you have to fight the good fight. And the good fight basically meaning that it's the sort of the classic quintessential of the hero and the villain, or the battle of good and evil. But it's more about this process of how do we fight this battle within ourselves on a daily basis. Of the world can be a battlefield often, and this isn't the first thing that we think of when we think of someone doing a yoga practice, but really it's the whole point of all the love and the light and the rainbows and the breathing and the meditation and everything is because there's so much intense stuff in the world that there's an incredible benefit to in bringing that element of life into a practice. And it's not so much about glorifying one thing over another necessarily, is more about just being in tune with what's right for you on a very large level. And so as we tune into the deeper philosophy of this life as a battlefield, we recognize that perhaps this is largely due to our own inner psychological nature, and that there are competing energies, competing thoughts within us, that even neuroscientists show that we have many thoughts per second even, and that there's so many neural synapses firing in the brain that it's almost like you have your queue of thoughts, so to speak, and the ones that have the most neural charge, the most synaptic charge, are the ones that actually get heard, so to speak. But then that gets into the deeper question of what are thoughts and where do thoughts come from in the first place, and how do we create patterns or grooves for the thoughts that we choose to use, and let go of the ones that we don't need. And this is often, it becomes the practice of, I don't like this, or I do like that, or I do like this but it's not good, or I don't like this but it is good, like whatever you want to think of, ice cream versus cold showers or something like that. But we don't want to place like too much judgment in that sense on either one thing, because it's only our thinking that puts a judgment on either thing. and that, you know, in some sense, like someone went through something like ice cream could be excellent for them in that moment, and who's to say, like, you know, in the experience of life, that ice cream doesn't play a beneficial role. But at the same time, we know that if you had cold showers every day versus ice cream every day, you would see a dramatic difference. So this is the balance. And balance is kind of a funny word, because in yoga there is that stereotypical idea of balance, or standing on one foot, or standing on your head, and that sort of thing. And that inner balance of being calm and poised in yourself, that this all sort of returns beyond that sense of balance. That balance might just be a result, but it's not something that we're really striving for in a big way. That there are much bigger things to strive for than balance, and that's sort of the deeper essence of yoga that this gets at, is that yoga as a word, the meaning is related to the word yoke, like an egg yolk, or the yoke of an ox, like an ox cart. The thing that ties the ox to the cart is called the yoke. It's what goes around the ox's neck that pulls the cart. And so if you think about yoga practice as something that is pulling or engaging in a larger process, that by harnessing our energies, when we're in a yoga practice, we actually tap into an energy field that is even larger than what we may normally think of as the energy that is available to us. And this is in many ways just connected to breathing, that if all we do is regulate our breath and be aware of slow breathing, of controlled breathing, of measured, even, relaxed breathing, that we can dramatically change our physiology, our mental state, our perception of life overall. And this is deeply connected to our way of being in the world, so to speak, that, you know, that it's things change when the way you look at them change. So if you want to change something about yourself, perhaps change the way you look at yourself. If you want to change something outside of yourself, that can be a little more challenging, perhaps not impossible, but it is that deep level of awareness required to know what you can and cannot change, when you can change your environment, or when you can, say, at the very least, ask for something, either from yourself or from someone else to change, that is within your power, and that you can even make declarations, demands, and invocations. That these are all similar, related to affirmations, and you could say they're all using the power of the word to proclaim something that you are calling into existence. And this gives us an incredible level of control in a very simple way, of all we're using is the power of our voice to command an experience. And we have that power. That is not something that is often widely known. It's something that we must learn and receive from others who have it, or who have developed the awareness of it. And that awareness of our ability to use our words to create reality has been widely known for many thousands of years throughout various spiritual traditions, as well as other, anybody who wanted to know the secrets of the spiritual traditions, like the alchemists or the kings or the people who wanted to do science, or and then there's all kinds of people that tried to use yoga and other methods, in ways that didn't work so well. And there's many practices that are more intense than others, and that's another thing to get into. This is why I mentioned the slow, even, gentle breathing. So as we become attuned to that layer of reality within us all, that we are all capable of slow, gentle, even breathing, this is a very simple and profound place to start, and in many ways is one of the biggest gifts of that ancient Indian yoga lineage and teaching for the world, is that we have a vast, broad understanding that yoga offers through the science of the Vedic philosophy, through Vedanta and Ayurveda, the current Indian medical system, which is 5,000 years old at this point, but still integrated with modern medicine. And as we understand that yoga is not just about the postures, there's meditation, there's the philosophy, the way of life, all of the different injunctions or recommendations, techniques and practices of the mind, that it is a universe of teaching in and of itself, and at the same time the universality of it centers in the breath, centers in the present moment, in our awareness of what's going on right here, right now. And this experience of tuning into the breath connects us to our nervous system. Our nervous system, especially in our heart, our spine, and our brain. And the peripheral nervous system being basically everything else. And so as we develop this practice of releasing the frenetic, fidgety energy of the body and of the mind into stillness, that we become aware of the amount of energy that's accessible to us that's normally used in frenetic activity. And we can then start to shape that energy, or to build that energy, to bring that energy up, and to what is commonly known as raise Kundalini energy. There's another term that's called raising the chrism, which is more connected to the energy of Christ and the teachings of Jesus, and that this is often not taught, ironically, in Christianity or in it's very uncommonly known, but it's becoming commonly known because of the Gnostic Gospels and Gnostics being some of the early practitioners of what we'd call Christianity now. And so this awareness of raising Kundalini energy or raising the chrism is generally all the same process. We have a nervous system, we have energy. There's a massive amount of energy stored at the base of the spine, between our legs, our reproductive organs, what is known in the other Eastern martial arts as the lower dantian. This is our sea of qi. It's our ocean of energy, and it's our center of gravity. So as we bring that energy up, we're moving this energy from its center in our just like in our loins, and we're bringing that energy up through our breath, using our breath essentially as a pump to just be like squeezing that energy up the spine. And that energy moves. It moves in many ways of its own accord. And as we tune into the space of energy as more of the dominant force than the breath itself, that the energy is actually what's driving the breath. And this becomes very obvious if you are out of breath. You're aware that you're out of breath because you were just using a lot of energy. You're breathing fast because you're using a lot of energy. If you're still and relaxed, then your breath will slow down naturally. It might become shallow and slow, which is totally fine. It's just the experience of you don't need to use that much energy, and therefore you are very, very, very still. But at the same time, just because you're not using energy doesn't mean that there's not energy there. And so if you're aware of the fact that there's just as much energy that's here when you were running, only now you're present with that energy and aware of how to move it without having to do all that running, that this can be a much different experience and potentially very effective and relaxing. And that's the goal, at least. So this is more of a safer version of how to raise Kundalini or how to raise the chrism than what's often taught, perhaps. And this is, I wouldn't really say that this is or is not Kundalini yoga, in the sense that everything that Kundalini is just a name for energy at the base of the spine, and that what we raise that energy, that then you could say that's Kundalini rising, but this is not Kundalini yoga in the sense of what Kundalini yoga is known as. So it's more of the gentle process of awakening this energy within us. So as we tune into the fact that when we breathe, first we have our diaphragm and we have our chest. This is our lower and our upper respiratory. So as we fill the belly up with air, this lower region sort of acts as the first pump, which then raises the energy, say here, to the heart or to the chest. And we can feel this love in the heart and the chest as that energy is being pulled up and visiting the heart. And we can feel that energy in the heart then expanding up into the brain. And as we feel the spine in this practice, just breathing, expanding slowly, contracting slowly, almost feeling like you're squeezing like a lemon all the air out, and then expanding, feeling yourself be juiced up again, filling up, and then releasing slowly. Always making sure that you're never forcing the breath. That's always gentle. You never want to expand into a space of forcing. Just stay relaxed as best as you can the entire time. And so as we tune into this process of energy moving up the spine, this is correlated to what one might call, once again, raising the chrism. As we raise this energy up, this is like, in the religious context, like Christ essentially going through his process of the 33 years of life, the 33 vertebrae of the spine, the 33 rungs of Jacob's ladder that lead to heaven, that there's, they say the kingdom of God is within you, that there is this awareness that somehow within us is already embedded all of the information or experience that we need to ascend or transcend beyond our human state into whatever is next for us. And that this is a deeper process of understanding why we're here, where we come from, where we're going in terms of being humans. There's this common saying of the angel within the monkey, that we're somewhere in between the two, or which our guiding instincts are, or our higher guides, so to speak. And there's this experience of just being here with all of that, and to let go of the judgment of it as it happens. And this can often be in the process of, as we're raising this energy, we're purifying the energy, because if we just raise it without purifying it, it doesn't feel as wonderful. It can be very, very intense, and this is why people have experience of frying their nervous system essentially through Kundalini awakenings or other forms of spiritual awakenings from any type of intense energetic experience. And this at the same time can be a really powerful force for a positive awakening as well. So this is why it's important to be gentle about it. So as this energy is rising up the spine, using our breath as a mechanical pump to raise this energy up the spine, we also have what are called the bandhas, or the locks. And the locks, generally there's three main locks. They're essentially tension points within the body that help us keep our energy from leaking, so to speak. And the first being the Mula Bandha, the root lock. This is at the perineum, or the taint, so to speak, the area just that is, if you're sitting on the floor, that is touching the floor between the anus and the genitals. And there's the pelvic floor muscles there are commonly strengthened using what's known as Kegel exercises. But generally pelvic floor strengthening exercises will help you tune into that interwoven mesh that is that pelvic floor, and this helps us maintain the strength of our spine, especially to reduce lower back pain, to help us sit longer in meditation, and to help us maintain that sense of awareness of how to raise that energy up the spine from the very base of the spine all the way up to the top. And as we then connect once again to our second lock, we have Uddiyana Bandha, which is the solar plexus or the stomach lock, and this just helps us from releasing too much energy here in the stomach by either. We want our stomach to be released and at the same time keeping the awareness of the fullness and the form. There's a more intense stomach lock. There, you could tense a little bit to maintain, but then there's also a more intense lock that you might do during a breath hold or something like that. And then finally, the third lock is the throat lock, Jalandhara Bandha, and this is for stimulating the thyroid gland and also just allowing us to basically pressurize energy within ourselves. So if we practice all three locks at the same time, and while, say, taking a deep breath, we then pressurize our body and then can essentially convert the energy that is present in oxygen into energy more quickly. And this is a scientific process. It's just, you can experience it for yourself. But essentially, as we raise that energy up and we can practice those locks, or we just stay relaxed, maybe just using the root lock. As that energy rises into the brain, there's a mechanical pressure that's exerted at the basically the brainstem or the base of the skull, where that energy from the spine is reaching into the brain now. And that mechanical pressure that was in the spine, generated from the force of the breath, that pumped that cerebrospinal fluid up the spine, the cerebrospinal fluid being a representative of the chrism. Also, the central point in the vertebrae in the spinal cord is the cerebrospinal fluid, which contains essential hormones and neurotransmitters for essential human functions. And so we're essentially bringing that energy up as we breathe and then purifying it in the brain. And in yoga practice, the simple way to purify is to simply chant Om. You can chant Om internally even, like almost as if you're intoning these sounds at specific parts in the body. So you can picture the chakras, which are energy centers, also known as the nerve ganglia in the spine. The ganglia are just the massive amounts of nerves that correspond to various organs that are located along the spine. So we generally call it, earth, water, fire, air, sound, and light. So we have our eliminative and reproductive organs. Generally, you'd say like eliminative, you might call that earth. You might call reproductive, or even just urinary, the water elements. You could call stomach the fire element, air, lungs, and the heart the air element. The throat, speech, the sound element, and our brain, the light element. And so you can see how there's an elemental correlation to the organs that is very obvious, and that we have this process of alchemical evolution happening within us, where we have come from light. Literally, our bodies are made of exploding stars that have been forged at the center of our universe, and then that stardust has expanded throughout time to then be condensed into water, and then condensed into fire, and then condensed into condensed into air, and then fire, and then water, and then earth. Now, this is something that Isaac Newton wrote about. This is something that he studied in his studies of alchemy, which then led into chemistry and perhaps even his understanding of calculus as well. But that alchemy was something that had been practiced for many, many years, and because of that, it was something that was common during Isaac Newton's time, but uncommon at the same time for someone who was a practicing scientist. But being one of the most revolutionary scientists of all time, it is fascinating to note that Newton did study alchemy and these various understandings of the fact that we are light, essentially. That the universe is a manifestation of this dream, essentially, of whatever however we wish to define our understanding of source, or of the creator or God, that idea that we are connected to this space beyond vibration. And at the same time, in the body, in the physical body, the first thing that happens in order to form a physical body is DNA. And DNA is essentially light encoded into protein. That memory, in many ways, is a mathematical form of light, and that light encodes that pattern into DNA. Then that DNA gets expressed through us, but we choose how that DNA is expressed through our epigenetics, or our choice of our ability to create our environment and our ability to perceive our environment and to adapt and then create our outlook, or be able to adapt a positive outlook regardless of circumstance. So as we tap into that understanding that we are light condensed into matter, then we're then raising that energy back up again to become light once again. So we can chant Om at these various energy centers so that we raise that vibration of each energy center into a space of purity. And there's this simple description of Om and why Om, what is Om. There's what's called So-Hum of the Tibetans, or Amin of the Egyptians and the Greeks. There's the classic Amen of the Judeo-Christians, and Om is the it's all the same. And so as we tap into that understanding of what is Om, that Om is this cosmic vibration. It's the foundational energy of creation, and it's, you could say, the cosmic motor. And so as we tune into that space within us of the essence of all vibration, of all matter, of all creation, that Om is like light in vibratory form. And so as we chant Om, this Om is creating peace, it's creating joy and light and positivity in each of these energy centers. So then once we're bringing that energy up and we're focusing the energy here, we bring that energy from the back of the head, from the brainstem, into the prefrontal cortex, or the neocortex. And in between the neocortex and the medulla, or the brainstem, is the pineal gland. And the pineal is often called the third eye. You can decide what you wish to say about that or feel about that, but basically understanding that we have the most ancient part of our brain at the back of our skull and the most advanced part of our brain at the front of the skull. And they both serve very valuable functions. Of course, we said that the brainstem is responsible for our heart rate, our breathing, etc. And then this is responsible for higher judgment, learning, what we might call our higher selves. So in Hatha Yoga, there's this idea that Hatha literally just means sun and moon, and Hatha is kind of the original physical asana that all yoga practice is based on nowadays. So we have this understanding of the sun and moon, the masculine, feminine, the yin and the yang, the hot and the cold, as being connected to us somehow. And we have it's known as the Ida and the Pingala, which are the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. That these are two energy nerve currents that run up the spine, like what are commonly seen in what's known as the caduceus, or the EMT symbol with the wings and the two serpents around the rod being that cerebrospinal fluid, or the spinal column, that center of the spine. And there is the physical expression of that, and then the energetic expression of that. So it's not that these ideas are overlapping, but they're not the exact same. So if I were to say this idea of the parasympathetic nervous system is literally a measurable thing, that neuroscience knows how it works, that it's our relaxation response, and the sympathetic system is our fight or flight response. Both very valuable. Most of the time we're too much in the sympathetic, so bringing more parasympathetic balance is sort of a big part of yoga, but it's actually to balance with the sympathetic and know the function of the sympathetic just as much. To merge the two is to merge the sun and the moon and find that center within ourselves in that central column of the spine to raise that energy once again. So this experience, then as we raise that energy, we bring this energy as much as we can here, just focusing at this point between the eyebrows. As we gather energy here, we can then continue to chant Om, bringing that energy and giving our love and attention to that point, that we focus on raising this energy, and then once again chanting Om to release any sort of frenetic energy, so to speak. That in yoga there's this idea of mantra or japa, which is the repetition of a mantra, and that it's meant to be very calming and soothing and to train the mind into a pattern of returning back to something that's like an original state when we're not doing anything else. Or even if we are doing something else, you can still repeat a mantra. And you don't have to repeat a mantra, you can just be in silence. It's a powerful practice to experiment with, and it serves a function that perhaps has been measured in science, I don't know, but that the benefit of chanting a mantra can bring about a lot of significant change within one's own experience or perception of reality. And this gets into the deeper experience of when we release into this space where we no longer necessarily have the same awareness of the body, and or even of thoughts, and of expanding into what we might call I am awareness, or expanding from the consciousness of ego, which is our brainstem at the back of the skull. We could call that part the moon part, and then merging into the sun, into that original source of light, so to speak, within us. And this process, the reason why I originally say that it's something that's religious, it's something that's scientific, it's something that in many ways is born out of yoga and perhaps also many other practices around the world, is that there's a certain universality to the nervous system and then to the human experience of having an awakening, so to speak. And we all experience this from time to time without trying. And whenever we feel joy or inspiration or just positivity, that we are raising that Kundalini energy. We are raising the chrism. We're bringing ourselves into that space of more of the awareness that we are light, or we are energy. We are not the body. We are not our thoughts. We simply are using the mind-body vehicle as a tool for expanding our awareness or our experience. And by releasing that identity of separateness that has been placed on us through the experience of being in a body with a thinking mind, that as we raise this energy and release, we expand into a state of interconnectedness, of oneness, of at the very least feeling more connected to humanity. And that experience brings us into the question of what is a human being. You know, we could say, like, of course, like, yeah, I see a picture of a person, or yes, like, you know, they, like Descartes said, like, I think, therefore I am. But are we really just thoughts, or are we a physical body? Or, you know, what are we? And, when a person dies, like, then what happens? Like, how do we describe that, the memory eternal? And, the ripple effect of that a person can have. And so there's this experience that we're all faced with of, why are we here? What are we doing here? What is the meaning of life? What is it to be human? Like, what are hands? How did we get hands? And as we reconnect to this deeper layer within us, there's no limit to our ability to experience questions, and then our ability to experience the fullness of knowledge, or of gnosis, like the Gnostics, of the I am presence, or of source, of our connection to eternal light, or to be able to see that light within not just ourselves, but everyone around us. That we're all learning and growing in this process, and that evolution has taken a very long path to bring us to where we are today. That we have the most complex nervous system of any creature on Earth, except for maybe dolphins and octopuses or something, and at the same time we are the only ones that walk upright on land, that have thumbs, that have tool building capabilities, and now, you know, our brains take up 20% of our calories, etc. And, you know, our ability to evolve has transcended beyond our DNA and now has moved into that realm of epigenetics, or what's above the DNA, what we might call memory or culture or, you know, collective consciousness, something like that. So we've moved into a new space, what you might call another level of ontology, where if normally we have the difference between a rock and a bird is that, you know, the rock is, we would probably call the rock not alive, and we'd call the bird alive. That's its own mystery. But then, you know, when you say a bird to a human, the difference now is awareness. That a bird, you'd say, probably is not self-aware. It doesn't think about stuff, at least in the same way a human would. And then a human now has evolved this space where it can think about itself. It can reflect. We, as a species, can now see our place in the universe. In many ways, like in the last 100 years, for the first time, more so than ever before. But people have been doing this, as far as we know, since the dawn of recorded history, or even before that. So we've always been wondering about things, and that's important. That if we come too strongly with our convictions or our opinions about the way things work, perhaps that takes away from our ability to learn. So always staying open and reflecting on the inner experience that you have, as well as finding a good teacher, finding someone who is believable, or at least you know, isn't out to do anything other than just share what they're teaching, and to be able to find a true teacher. There's the Kriya Yoga lineage, which is a modern expression of yoga in the West, that Yogananda came to the West about 100 years ago to start what's called Self-Realization Fellowship, and then Ananda was an offshoot of that, which is in Northern California. Self-Realization is headquartered in Los Angeles, and that the primary goal of that movement in Yogananda and Kriya Yoga in general is just to bring more awareness to humankind, one, through that experience of yoga and all of that awareness of gently raising our energy to this higher center where we realize our self, hence self-realization, but also just to create a sense of unity and brotherhood or sisterhood, everyone all together around the whole world, that we are in this together, and that, you know, war and conflict and all of that in many ways is natural to humankind. But if you think about two little kids, two brothers fighting, just because two brothers will fight, it doesn't mean that they can't love each other afterwards. And we see this all too many times with wars. We see this so much in the world where people fight and then they make up and they're like, why did we do that? So if we can bring more awareness of peace and love into the world, we understand that there's a very real practical reason for why we're doing this, and how each individual can play a role in bringing more of that to the world. So I wish you all great wisdom and love and understanding, and to bring awakening to others, and may you be blessed. Thank you for watching.